Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Good start to your week, I hope. Let's talk through some of the things that are new this week. Not loads and loads of news, but there are a couple of things to talk to you about. So let's get into it. First one, big thing that happened this week was a Microsoft earnings call. And the thing about earnings calls is that they're often interspersed with good stats. And this time around, we got some good information about Microsoft Teams usage. The monthly active users number is up to 280. That's pretty good. It was 270 of this time last year. So it's kind of gained an extra 10 million, which is impressive. And then there are some other stats as well. I did a blog post which called out some of the kind of ones that I thought were more interesting. The number of third-party apps with more than 10,000 users has increased nearly 40% year on year. We don't know. One of the things about these earnings calls is that Microsoft will present the information they want to present, and we don't know what that base is. 40% on nothing, 40% on one app. It's very hard to know what that 40% represents. What's more interesting are the kind of absolute numbers. So if you look down, scan down this blog post, you can see Power Automate, more than 45,000 customers. Again, that is up over 50%. That's interesting in a way to think that this time last year, Power Automate only had 22,500 customers. Is that a lot? Is that a little? I don't know. I feel like I thought it might be more than that, but maybe not. And so this is interesting. One to watch, I think, that I didn't really go into loads of detail about. And to be honest, the earnings call only really touched on was around Azure ML, the machine learning part of Azure. Their revenue has increased more than 100% for 5 quarters in a row. Now, that's pretty good for any application, and it almost doesn't matter what the base is. That is an area of Azure that is growing. What was interesting about the earnings call is that they didn't mention Mesh, they didn't mention HoloLens, they didn't mention virtual reality. And I think that's kind of come off the back of some of the news that came out last week and the week before around a kind of shift in focus and a whole bunch of layoffs, particularly in some of those areas around the HoloLens and around the mixed reality toolkit and other places like that. Although I've got one of my things I want to talk about in a minute is kind of maybe going to put some of that into perspective. So let's park that thought for a minute. Let's come back to Teams numbers. I think they're good. I don't think they're bad. I think it's always worth reminding yourself that this is a good platform to be building on. And if people need some evidence or proof or whatever about this is a good platform to be building on and Teams is a good platform to be on, these numbers help. I think they kind of show what other people in the market are doing. So that's all good. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about this blog post by Charles Lamanna, who is the CVP for business applications and platforms, so everything kind of low code. This is an interesting blog post because the reason I included this blog post is because if you need some good case studies for low code solutions, this is quite a good blog post for doing it. So if I just skim past this, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, there are some good examples here. There's an example here of using the EHR connector, which is not quite low code, and that's actually quite pro code, but it's something you can do in Microsoft Teams. There's an electronic health record connector that you can use for Teams. EHR is kind of a standard for medical records, and you can then use Microsoft Teams to kind of more effectively, if you like, bring in appointment data and patient data into Teams. There's a good example here from Coca-Cola. And this is more them using Power Platform to connect a legacy system. And then there's an example here from Pearson VUE. Again, not really low code, but it's more about using kind of the Microsoft stack, in this case, specifically security. So some good examples. The premise of the blog post, which I'm not sure I agree with, is that the Power Platform has lots and lots of connectors, and therefore you should use it because it's more secure, I think, or it's easier. So they're calling it, like, this blog post kind of calls out the growth in data, the risk, and then touches on the cost of breaches and things like that, increasing attack surfaces. And I think it tries to kind of draw the parallel that there's lots more data, there's lots more risk of attack. But if you use Microsoft connectors, you're going to be okay. And I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. But it's, like the blog, like I say, the blog post is good for your references and your case studies for real world customers doing real world things, which are often quite hard to find. So if you need some of those, this is a good blog post for that. And that's kind of the only reason I included it, because, read it and see what you think. Like, you may disagree with my thoughts on it. I thought it was a kind of a tenuous link, but let's see. Now, I did say I was going to come back and talk about virtual reality or mixed reality as well, and that's definitely the case. I don't know if you've been paying attention. I had not been paying attention to what's been going on really at the World Economic Forum in the last couple of weeks. But one thing that was interesting from the World Economic Forum is that the forum have been working behind the scenes on something they call the Global Collaboration Village. Which is an initiative that is being done in partnership with Microsoft and also in partnership with Accenture. And the idea is, here we go. The idea is to use mixed reality to harness the power of the metaverse to kind of create a space to advance public interest. So the World Economic Forum is going into the metaverse, basically. Kind of feels like maybe slightly tentative steps for them. I'm not sure they actually did anything with it this year. They've got lots of key aims. This is kind of their launch. Like I say, this is a Microsoft thing. It looks like it's Microsoft Mesh under the hood. The reason I included this really is as something of a counter to that message that, Microsoft are shutting down everything to do with mixed reality and the metaverse, with their kind of layoffs, with their change in position. We've heard them kind of laying off some of these teams. And I just wanted to put this up as actually that might not be the whole story. I think Microsoft are still in this world, but I think it's just priorities and it's money and it's timing and it's all sorts of things that mean that actually right now, they can try and do both of these things. Can they? I don't know. I don't know if they can remove that level of talent and still get away with stuff like this. They obviously think they can. I don't know how involved they are in this virtual collaboration village. They might not be very involved at all, in which case they don't need that engineering resource. So I don't know. Again, lots of don't knows, but I wanted to put this up as a, not every story is Microsoft walking away from mixed reality and from the metaverse and all that stuff. Here's an example of them doing exactly the opposite and helping big organizations like the World Economic Forum take those first steps into the metaverse. So I thought that was interesting. Finally, a warning for you. If you have any VMs in Azure, if they're really old VMs and they've been around quite a long time, which actually quite a lot of VMs are, because before, the VMs that are there now are the ones that were servers on premise. And, if you were on it, in the early days of Azure and you moved over some of your IaaS workloads, some of your on-premise servers into IaaS workloads, and you haven't touched them since, they may still be running on Azure Service Manager, and that's not really going to be a thing for very much longer. They need to be moved over to Azure Resource Manager. In fact, Azure Service Manager is going away in September. So you do need to migrate them over to Azure Resource Manager. This is not a completely simple operation. There are quite a few steps apparently to take. I have not looked into it. I don't have any VMs on Azure Service Manager, so I'm not impacted by this as far as I know. What's interesting is that they've called out very clearly that they're not going to extend it past the 1st of September. They've already extended it once, and I imagine there was some big company somewhere that shouted at them and made them extend it from now until September. I think they're being pretty clear that they're not going to extend it after September. So if that's you, if you're that big company with loads of VMs still on Azure Service Manager, you need to get on it, because it sounds like they're not going to give you another extension. If you didn't know this was happening and now you're panicking, don't worry, you've got until September, but you do kind of need to get it sorted by September, because it sounds like they're not going to move it on anymore. There's a link to some notes, some Q&A and some help and extra resources to help you do that migration. But that's probably something you want to get in the plan for this year. All right, I think that's everything from me. for this week. Whatever it is you're doing, I hope you have a good one. I'm off to write some blog posts about some new functionality in Bot Framework and maybe something about Company Communicator. I know I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I haven't done anything with it yet, and I'm still kind of on the fence about whether it's enough information to make a blog post. So we'll see. All right, whatever it is you're doing, have a good one, and I will talk to you again next time.